Hi, welcome to Papa's Workshop. I've got something totally different for you today. Recently, my son decided he wanted to put the wood planks onto the ceiling in his upstairs rooms. And to be able to do that, we looked at the shiplap, which you see a lot of people use, and we also looked at the flooring. Guys, that's expensive. So what do? With the shop that I have, make our own. So we bought 10 sheets of plywood, and I'm going to show you how we ripped it down, milled it, and created our own ceiling planks to be able to install. And I'm going to need your help at the end too. I've got a couple of questions I need you guys to help out and answer. So let's get started. Doing all of the milling for these ceiling planks was not tough, but it was repetitious. Now I started out with 10 sheets of 4x8 sheets of 1/4-inch birch plywood. The first thing I had to do was rip all 10 sheets down to 5 1/4-inch long strips. That gave me 90 strips that were 5 1/4 inches wide and 8 feet long. That was the first step. But that was only the first part of the milling process to be able to get all of this done. Now you might say this took quite a bit of time to be able to do. Yes, it is. And the good thing is my time's pretty cheap. Because to be able to do this project, it actually was very, very inexpensive as compared to buying like the store-bought shiplap or flooring material or other things that I've seen people do on YouTube. This, without a doubt, is the cheapest way to do it if you can have the time to be able to do the setup. And before anybody says anything, my hands are quite a way away from the blade. No, you really can't use a push stick for this because it actually would be more dangerous to try to switch from holding the plywood and then switching over to push it through. So this by far is the safest way to be able to do it. And my hands definitely are a couple inches away from that blade. Once I had all 90 strips cut, now it was time to be able to put the half lap on it. So I set up the dado blade, raised it up 1/8 of an inch, and I do have a solid feather board on here, and I also have a zero clearance fence that I put on. And that allows me to be able to run this material through. Again, 90 strips. But it's not just 90 strips, because I put a half lap on one side, flip this over, and then I run it through again on the other side. So that makes it 180 times that I had to run this wood through the table saw to put the half lap on each side of these 5 1/4-inch strips. Now I want to show you up close taking this strip of wood. Now I have a 1/4-inch dado blade set up. It is an 1/8 inch high. You'll see my zero clearance fence installed and a solid feather board. That makes it where my hands are totally away from that blade because the blade is completely enclosed. So as I run this through, it's putting a half lap onto that material, and you can see it there. Now I have to flip that over and cut it again. That way when it goes onto the ceiling, these boards will lap over on top of each other and give a perfect seam. But we're not done yet. For the next phase of this operation, I had to set up the router table. Now the bit that I used was a 90-degree V-bit, and I put that in where it was cutting only 1/8 of an inch of the material, halfway through. What I was doing is putting a bevel right on the end of this panel. Now this is the first step of the operation, and it was really nice having my son in the shop, because as I cut each one of them, he was able to take it and flip it around and set it up on the table for the second cut on this end. Now we decided in the interest of time not to do the half lap on these ends, just the bevel cut with the 90-degree V-bit. Now I also used the table saw as an outfeed table to be able to support the work as I ran it through the router. Once all 90 of these were cut on this end, we had to start over and run all 90 again on the other end to be able to complete this stage of the operation. Again, having my son in the shop really saved a lot of time for this process. Okay, so far we've got the half laps cut on both sides. We have the ends with the 90-degree V-bit done. And now, as you might expect, it's time to put the V-groove on the length of each of these panels. Now, the first part of this, the operation and the setup with the router table is exactly the same. I did not have to change anything. But what I did have to do is set up the outfeed tables. The table saw acted on one end, and I had the other table to support the end as I was running it through the router. This actually turned out to be pretty efficient, but as we run it through, you can see the plywood does dip down, and we have to be able to lift it up. And we've got a solution for that too in just a moment. Because that got to be a little bit of a pain to be able to have to raise that up each time. Now, I wanted to flip this around and show you the other side. I was able to run all 90 pieces through the router table with this setup. And it was just a matter of having the fence set at the correct distance from the router bit. The router bit was raised up only 1/8 of an inch, so it's barely cutting. And I had the solid featherboard in place. That made it where it was a very safe and easy operation to be able to perform. Now, the last step of this whole operation, where I had to move the fence back about 1/4 of an inch, and then without changing the height of the bit, I ran the other side of these long strips through the router table, and that gave my V-groove all the way around on all 4 sides. Now, after a while, my son got tired of lifting each piece onto the table saw for my outfeed table, and look, there we go. He slid another board right back down to the router table, and that became the perfect slide. So he had one less step to be able to do, and that made it so much easier. So his job now was to be able to take these boards as they came off the router table and stack them. Because now we had all 4 sides with the V-groove cut, the half laps done. These are now ready to be able to take over to the house and install them onto the ceiling. Now I want to give a real good close-up. This is that 90-degree V-bit that cuts right down to that half lap. That turned out absolutely perfect. Look at the end. There's a 90-degree cut there. That just absolutely turned out amazing. Turned out actually a lot better than I expected to. And there's what 10 sheets of plywood look like, all stacked up. Look at that edge on a close-up one more time. You can see that 90-degree bevel. There's the half lap, and that 90-degree bevel goes right down to the edge of that half lap. Now, we did take a little 220 sandpaper and hit it real lightly to catch up some of those edges from the half lap, but it really wasn't bad at all. This is probably the worst one. And here we go. This is a look as it is being installed onto the ceiling. It's really looking great at this point. Now all we had to do is a little bit of glue and use a finished nail gun to be able to nail it in place. And you can see here, they're working on it. You notice I'm not doing the work on the ceiling. Leave this to the young folks. But we put a little glue onto the back side, slid it in place, use the nail gun to go ahead and tack it into position while that glue dried, and this is coming together fantastic. I really like the way it's looking. This is a great family project. Now this is where I need all of your help. They haven't made a decision yet whether they're going to leave it the natural color as you see here, or if they're going to paint it. So please leave me a comment down below and let me know, should they paint it or should they leave it natural? I want to take this opportunity to thank all of the Patreons who help support this channel. And for everyone else, I thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you on the next project.